And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, Tom Vasel from the Dice Tower here. My first review that I wrote, well, one of my first reviews that I wrote over a decade ago was on a game called Duel of Ages. And the reason I wrote the review wasn't because I wrote a review on everything under the sun, which is what I do now. But the reason I was excited to review the game was because it was so exciting. I was looking online and learn about all these wonderful new games, and I saw that this game went up to 16 players. And I said, 16 players. So I went ahead and I got the game, and when it came, it came with 7 expansions, which was exciting because at that time I thought expansions were cool. I still think expansions are cool. But it came with all these games, and I went through it, and I was just amazed. It was like a role-playing game on a board, and that was what I was looking for. Now, as time went by, I realized that that whole 16-player thing was really not there. It's a 2-player game, which can also be played in teams. At most 3 players per side, or else it gets a little unwieldy. This is the new version now, Duel of Ages 2, that came out. I mean, I was so excited when it first came out. I went online and I made up characters that some of those characters were modified and actually used in the game, and some of them are still in here. There's a character, Lyra Swan, who's named after my wife, Laura Swanson, was her maiden name. And I like that. There's several other characters that I designed that made it into the game, although they're unrecognizable from what I originally said. But I was just so excited about the game, and I liked it. Now, as time went by, Duel of Ages dropped from my #1, and that doesn't mean it's a bad game by any means, because I played 3,000, I don't know, we're probably up to 4,000 at this point, so many different games. It was easily my top 10 or 20 at the farthest. It's just that because the game was basically 2-player only, and because it took a chunk of time, you could determine how much time, but if you're going to have any fun with the game, it had to be 2 hours. Duel of Ages 2 coming out. I was excited about that. I've known about it for a while. I've watched the development a little bit. I wasn't as involved with that, but I certainly gave it some input, and I had really hoped that they would take Duel of Ages 1 and streamline it somewhat to make it different. Now, if you want to see how Duel of Ages 2 plays overall, there's another video I've done in which basically you can see the game in our review and my daughter's review, she never played Duel of Ages 1, and we reviewed that and talk about it. In this one, I'm going to just compare the first one to the second one. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you a few of the components and how they differ from Duel of Ages 1 to Duel of Ages 2. Let's start talking about the differences. First of all, the new platters, well, they have pictures of people on the back of them, which is okay, I guess. I don't really see how that matters. But they're very thick, they're very sturdy. Any of the warping problems that there was in the first editions are gone. No longer do I have to bend my boards. Hooray. The platters themselves, the new towers are color-coded, which makes them easier to see which tower is which. A bigger change, I suppose, is that the towers and the bases and the labyrinths are all very different now. The labyrinths have 3 different spots you can go to. You don't have to run through the whole thing, and they give bonuses. This was something that they were messing around with near the end of Duel of Ages. Bases are very similar to the way they were before, except now there's a healing spot in the middle where you can go get healed, and that's a really nice addition to the game. You can go back to your own base to get healed. The characters themselves, the first one I pasted them all to black or white blocks. Here they have kind of a white background or a black background. There's still a pain to sort through all the characters to find which ones you're using each game, but it is what it is. And I still wish there was a way that they could be risen off the board a little bit. I might have to put them all on blocks anyway, because still sometimes you have to look twice to see where they are. But what can you do about that? The biggest change is the characters themselves in this game, I would say. The card size is much bigger, something that's much appreciated, and there's artwork for the characters. Now, this is something I really like in the game. Rather than see a pair of boxing gloves be my character, there is Ironhead McCrae, and you can also see that they've added a lot of stats with numbers rather than just colors. At first, I was a little like, oh man, I really like the color system. I liked how white was great, but numbers does make it a little bit easier, and they still have colors as an indicator of how good something is. Now, characters are somewhat the same. You can see he's a 6'5" here, a 6'5" here, although that they've changed a few things. And they've modified the characters as time goes by, especially to fix them with the way that the original game was. So I just want to show you a few examples of characters from the original game next to their new counterparts. One thing that we noticed was that there's a lot of females in the game, which is an unusual thing for games of this type. But again, you can see just kind of these old cards kind of look very lackluster when compared to the brand new cards, because the new ones, the picture, the quality looks good. Now, where my concern was that we have added stats and we've added abilities to the cards, and these cards do look daunting for someone who's never played the game before, because they're going to take a look at the new card and look at all the stats on that card and say, wow, you know, there's just so much more on the card. And I think that that could be problematic, especially when we're trying to get new people to play the game. But again, man, you just can't get over how cool it is. And even though this is daunting for someone new getting into the game, for those of us who already do enjoy the game, that's a ton of information. One of the best additions to this game is with the equipment. Before, there was +1 to different things, like El Cid had a +1 hit with a blade. Well, now he simply has the blade icon on his card. So then when I'm going through the different weapons and I find the Fong's prison weapon here, it says anyone with that symbol gets a +1 hit. That's not necessarily true with every blade, so you look at the card and it's very easy to match the symbols. Is this the weapon I'm looking for? Yes, it is. It matches him, and can he use it? We still use his strength and intelligence. Sorry, El Cid, you're not smart enough to use this blade. It's too strange and weird for you. But I really like how the new equipment looks, although it's kind of identical to the old equipment picture-wise, and there's very little change here, but it's a lot easier to see what it does. I can glance up here. This one adds 1 to movement, very simple, and I'm very happy with how the new equipment works. More so than that, if you'll notice that there is now different kinds of equipment. There's common equipment, secret equipment, and elite equipment, and all 3 of these are different. So the elite one is the better stuff. No longer will someone get a guided missile while you get a stupid club that's not as good. The best stuff is here in elite, but you have to get a 2-card draw for that to work. And when you get a 1-card draw, you can get secret stuff, which is missions. That's a new thing to the game to go do. Or you can take common, which is kind of a guaranteed equipment. Another thing that the game did is they have a new henchmen deck for those who have henchmen, and these henchmen themselves are, you know, there's a slick Miami thug and a Starbase engineer and a French footman, and I like that because there's henchmen and they're useful, just like they were in the original game, but they're not other characters, so you don't have a henchman who's just all-encompassingly powerful, and it's like, wow, you know, you really lucked out with the henchmen that you drew. Here, the henchmen are cool, but they're like their own thing. And it's neat to have that extra deck involved in the game. I have to say, I still like rolling dice. There's just something about rolling dice. But I can live without rolling dice in this game. It took me a while. When I was using the cards for the first game, I was like, big deal. I can just roll dice and tell you what these cards meant. These are the challenge cards. But the new challenge cards, even though that's a lot of information on one card, and I don't know, it's a little overwhelming. Still, it's a very convenient way to look at the challenge. Yeah, you have to draw 2 cards, one to see if you hit and one to see if you damage. And I still think that could have been streamlined a little bit better, but it is nice. It's easy to look at. And the new challenge cards, here's the exact same challenge card. This is from the original game, the Dragon Sprint, and the new one. One thing I really like about this new game is the bonus system. How the Ancient still gives you a bonus, but then you can look, are those symbols on my card? If they are, I get a +1 bonus for each of those. And I also like the honor system and how the respect system, when you turn it over, you can get all sorts of bonuses that you never dreamed of getting, all sorts of cool things, and you can even level up occasionally or get these one-time use experience chips that you can use to pass a goal. So these are neat. These are still the heart of the game, but now that you can place these tokens out everywhere, all over the board, they have to be 4 spaces apart, These are very easy to beat, or not necessarily easy to beat. You don't need to roll dice to accomplish them. But the great thing about these are they kind of seed the game with cards. You can send people running around just to collect these. One of the problems with Duel of Ages initially was that you would run around and you wouldn't get all the cards that you wanted over the course of the game. Well, now you can very quickly get cards and you have all this cool equipment. Because that's what makes Duel of Ages cool, is to have neat characters with cool equipment. All right. Well, let's start with a negative thing, because I want to be fair to this. I love Duel of Ages 2, okay? I guess that's not negative, that's positive. I love it. But let me start with the negative things. First of all, like I said, I love rolling dice, but I can live with turning the cards over and accomplishing that. You know, when I first saw the prototype dice, I was like, what is this? I want to roll dice. I still like rolling dice, but I can see how the card is faster and efficient. The game probably could have been streamlined more. I still feel like the designer listened a little too much to those who love the game so much they wanted to add more. I'm one of those people, you know, sure, give me more, give me more, give me more complexity. But the rule of good game design is always, what do you have? And now streamline it. And I think the game could have been streamlined. However, there are parts of it that have been streamlined. Getting rid of all those annoying little towers and have to remember what each tower did is fine. Having the healing thing in your base, that was a good thing. Having all those little tokens all over the map of adventures you can do to get cards, that's a great way to seed the game with cards, and also gives people a reason to run around the board and go to not just head to the nearest labyrinth. I like that also. I'm a big fan of the graphical update, the component quality. I am concerned about the price. Currently, and this may change for whenever you're watching the video, but currently, to buy the base game is, I think, $70-some. Okay, that's a chunk of change, but you're getting a game, a ton of game in there, and considering how pricey other games are, I don't think that's bad at all. But to get the master set costs $200 when you get both of them together. Now, that is pricey. Now, it's kind of odd, because if they had sold the master set into 6 or 7 expansions, which it really is. It's that many expansions worth of stuff put together. You could have sold those 6 or 7 expansions for $20 each, and nobody would have blinked. But when you say, hey, buy it all at once, that's kind of, whoa, I don't know. So I'm worried that that will scare some people off from the master set, because that's a lot of money to put down at one time, and most people would prefer to get little expansions. I think the little expansion idea is not a bad one myself. However, getting this master set and just opening up, it's just mind-blowing how much is in it. There's just tons in it. So I love that. Right now, Duel of Ages 2 with the master set has as much stuff as the original game did with all 9 or 10 of its expansions. That's perfect. That's all you need. That's all I need. Now, don't get me wrong. If they come out expansion, I want them. I want them all. But I'm really happy with this, and we'll be playing with it for a while. Is it better than 1? Yes, in every way. Like I said, I want 1 to be streamlined, but if they're not going to streamline it, then this is what I want. It adds more stuff. It adds a lot more interaction. The characters are much better. The way that they changed item cards with the icons at the bottom is really good. Having your own henchman deck, splitting the weapons in the regular and elite. There's just a lot of good changes that have been done to the game, and this is easily in my top 5 at this point in time in how much I want to play it. I love this. I am concerned that to teach someone the game, I have to spend between 30 minutes and an hour. The rulebook itself teaches it in missions, which I don't like. I don't like it that way, because the first mission is really lackluster compared to, it doesn't use the labyrinths, it doesn't use a lot of the things. It's just very kind of a way to introduce yourself to how people move around the board, and then it has a walking, and I wish there had just been one rule book that said this is how you play. Instead, when I'm looking for a rule, I have to say, now which mission was the one that introduced that rule? I think a stronger rule book would have helped out there, even just an almanac of all the different rules in the game. Now, it sounds like I'm nitpicking, because I am. Because just taking the game straight, awesome. 2 and 11. Love it. So I'm just picking on the different things, because I'm not looking at this with just shining eyes. Duel of Ages 2! I want to take a look at it in more of a critical way. But all that being said, I'm glad it exists. I'm glad I have it. I will not get rid of it unless they make Duel of Ages 3 someday. It's good. If you have a chance to pick up a copy and you want a super strong thematic game, this is one. Duel of Ages 1, you were good. It's good to see all you guys and your cards, but you're gone. Duel of Ages 2 has taken over, and I'm glad for it.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.
Good.